It began like any other Friday night, loud music, dim lights, and the soft hum of freedom after a long, exhausting week. Maya, with her short hair and that reckless laugh that could make even silence blush, clinked her glass against Aisha's. Aisha, all grace, with long hair cascading down her shoulders and eyes that spoke in poems, smiled back. They had done this 100 times before. Same bar, same corner booth, same two souls trying to forget the world for a while. But this night was different, though neither of them knew it yet. The first shot of tequila burned like a challenge, the second like a dare. They laughed about everything: bad bosses, broken plans, the endless cycle of pretending they had it all figured out. Maya teased Aisha for being too careful, too composed. "You need a little chaos," she said, tilting her head mischievously. Aisha rolled her eyes, but her lips curved into a smile that lingered a bit too long. There was something in the air, not just the buzz of alcohol, but something quieter, deeper, almost electric. Karaoke came next. Maya sang terribly, purposefully off-key, while Aisha laughed so hard tears filled her eyes. It felt like being 16 again, wild, unfiltered, untouchable. The city pulsed outside, but their world had shrunk to this, just two best friends orbiting each other's laughter. When the clock struck midnight, they stumbled out into the cool air, hands brushing accidentally, then deliberately. "Let's do something crazy," Maya said, her voice soft but daring. "Like what?" Aisha giggled, half expecting another round of shots or maybe dancing on a table. "Let's get married," Maya slurred, a grin spreading wide across her face. "Just for fun." Aisha froze, then laughed, the kind that hides confusion under charm. "Bet," she said, playing along, but her heart thudded faster. Maybe it was the tequila. Maybe it was the way Maya's eyes looked at her in that moment, like she wasn't joking at all. Minutes blurred. Somehow, they found a tiny 24-hour chapel with flickering fairy lights and a sleepy officiant who didn't ask too many questions. Maya's fingers trembled as she held Aisha's hand, both of them giggling through the vows. Yet beneath the laughter, there was a pulse of something real, something that scared them both. When they said, "I do," the words felt heavier than the night deserved. Later, lying side by side on a cheap motel bed, wedding rings made of string glinting in the dark, silence wrapped around them. Aisha turned to say something to laugh it off, but stopped when she saw Maya looking at her, eyes soft and unguarded. Maybe it was the tequila. Maybe it was destiny disguised as a dare. Either way, that night, the one that started with laughter, changed everything forever. It started as a dare, the kind that only makes sense after 3 cocktails and a night of laughter that feels too easy, too endless. The neon lights of Las Vegas painted their faces in soft pink and reckless gold. Maya couldn't stop laughing, her hand tangled in Aisha's as they stumbled out of a bar and into the kind of trouble only love disguised as chaos can create. "Let's get married," Maya had joked, voice trembling between mockery and sincerity. Aisha, tipsy and dizzy with something far stronger than alcohol, grinned. "Bet you won't." And somehow, those words became a promise neither meant to keep but both secretly wanted to. Minutes later, they stood under a flickering sign that read "Forever Yours Wedding Chapel." The forever blinked in and out, like it couldn't decide if it believed them. Maya held a bouquet of plastic roses, one petal slightly melted by the desert heat. Aisha tried not to think about how the pink glow made Maya's eyes shimmer. The officiant, a tired man in an Elvis costume, began reading vows in a voice that barely matched the absurdity of the moment. But then, something shifted. Between the laughter, the echo of "I do," and the shaky hands holding fake flowers, the air changed. They were supposed to be pretending. Just another wild night to laugh about later. But as Maya looked at Aisha, she realized her heart wasn't joking. The world outside blurred the noise, the lights, the people fading into a soft silence where only they existed. Aisha tried to laugh it off, but her smile wavered. The moment their lips met, it wasn't for show. It wasn't drunk or silly or fleeting. It was the kind of kiss that feels like a truth slipping out before you're ready to say it. A stranger in the corner clapped, snapping a photo with a flash that pulled them back into reality. The officiant mumbled something about, "Till love do you part," and they stumbled outside, giggling again, hearts racing in unison. The desert air was cool, sharp, alive. Maya looked at the cheap plastic ring on her finger and whispered, "Guess we're married now." Aisha laughed, but her eyes softened. "Guess we are." They didn't talk about it after that, at least not right away. But when they got back to the hotel, neither could sleep. Between the sheets and the silence, the memory of that kiss played again and again, softer each time, like a secret meant only for them. The next morning, the chapel receipt lay on the nightstand, proof of something that was never supposed to happen, yet somehow felt more real than anything else. It wasn't about the vows or the lights or even the ring. It was about that one unguarded moment when laughter turned into love, and two hearts accidentally found home in each other. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, spilling gold across the messy bed, catching on two tangled figures buried in soft sheets and last night's chaos. The faint scent of alcohol still lingered in the air, mixed with something tender, something they couldn't quite name yet. Maya groaned first, her head pounding, eyes half open as she tried to make sense of the glitter on her arm and the faint red lipstick smudged on her neck. Aisha stirred beside her, blinking against the light, hair wild, wearing that same silly plastic ring they'd pulled from the party's cake as a joke. For a long, fragile moment, neither spoke. Just the sound of their shallow breaths filled the silence, heavy with questions neither knew how to ask. Then Maya sat up suddenly, clutching her head. "Wait, did we actually?" she whispered, the sentence unfinished but heavy with disbelief. Aisha's eyes darted to the crumpled papers on the nightstand. She reached for them with trembling hands, scanning the text through a haze of disbelief. And there it was, two signatures, theirs, scrawled and crooked, but real. Marriage certificates. Legal, binding, and impossibly absurd. For a heartbeat, silence stretched between them, the kind that feels like it could shatter with a single word. Then Maya's lip trembled, not with fear, but with the absurd hilarity of it all. She started to laugh. It was small at first, almost nervous, but soon Aisha joined in, and the room filled with laughter so deep and unrestrained it made their eyes water. They laughed until the tears came, until the weight of confusion lightened just enough to breathe. When the laughter finally faded, what remained was something gentler, a quiet recognition. Aisha looked at Maya, her smile softening. "You know," she said quietly, "I don't think I regret it." Maya turned to her, surprise flickering into something warmer. The sunlight painted her face gold, highlighting the sincerity in her sleepy eyes. "Neither do I," she murmured, voice almost breaking. Outside, the world carried on, cars honking, birds singing, life moving indifferently past their tiny miracle. But inside that messy room, time stood still. Two souls sat wrapped in morning light, holding on to something they didn't fully understand, but didn't want to let go of either. What began as a drunken accident now felt like fate playing a mischievous hand. They talked for hours about the night before, about fear and feelings, about how maybe, just maybe, something real had always been there, quietly waiting for a moment like this to surface. And as the morning stretched into afternoon, the hangover faded, but the warmth didn't. By the time they finally left the bed, their hands brushed, hesitant, shy, but full of something honest. Maybe it wasn't the wrong kind of mistake after all. Maybe, against all logic, love had simply found its way in through laughter, through chaos, through the morning after. Days later, the laughter had quieted down, and the world around them felt painfully loud. Reality had finally caught up, messy, complicated, and unkind. Friends had stopped joking about their drunken marriage and started asking serious questions. Families wanted explanations, proof that it was all a mistake. The pictures, the certificate, the love-filled glances caught by someone's phone camera, it was all too real to deny, yet too impossible to accept. Maya and Aisha found themselves sitting side by side in a lawyer's office, the air between them heavy with everything left unsaid. Papers waited to be signed, pens lay ready, and yet neither of them could bring themselves to reach out. Maya tapped her foot restlessly, her fingers clutching the edge of her chair. Aisha sat still, staring at the lawyer's desk as if the wood grains could offer her answers. Every second stretched into an eternity. They could still taste the sweetness of that night, the laughter that came so easily, the warmth of each other's hands, and that kiss that had changed everything. It wasn't just a kiss anymore. It was a question neither of them dared to ask. It was supposed to be pretend, Maya finally whispered, breaking the silence that was suffocating them both. Her voice trembled like a confession. She tried to smile, but it faltered halfway, lost somewhere between regret and longing. Yeah, Aisha replied softly, her voice barely above a breath, but it stopped feeling like it. Her eyes glistened, and in that moment, Maya saw everything she had been trying not to admit, the fear, the ache, the love. The lawyer cleared his throat gently, asking if they were ready to proceed. Neither answered. The papers on the table blurred as Maya blinked back tears. She thought of the way Aisha laughed when she was drunk, of how her hand always found hers in a crowd, of how her name sounded different, softer, when Aisha said it. This wasn't supposed to happen. They weren't supposed to fall. But love doesn't care about supposed tos. Aisha reached for the pen but paused midway. If we sign this, she said quietly, we go back to being strangers who made a mistake. Her hand trembled. But I don't want to forget what it felt like, even if it was just one night. Maya's chest tightened. For a second, she wanted to tell her everything, how she'd replayed that kiss 100 times, how she'd caught herself smiling for no reason, how she didn't want this to end. But she said nothing. Instead, she placed her hand gently over Aisha's, stopping her from signing. Their eyes met, full of everything they couldn't say out loud. The lawyer shifted awkwardly, pretending not to notice the storm brewing between them. Outside, life went on, cars honking, people laughing, the world unaware that two hearts were quietly breaking. It wasn't the goodbye they planned. It was the almost goodbye, the kind that lingers, the kind that changes everything forever. The street was quiet, the kind that holds your silence for you when words refuse to come out. Maya's steps echoed against the pavement, each one heavier than the last. Behind her, Aisha walked the other way, her fingers trembling slightly as she brushed away a tear that dared to fall. It wasn't supposed to end like this, not with silence, not with distance. But sometimes love gets tangled in fear, in timing, in the world's expectations. They had promised each other strength, but promises sometimes fade beneath the weight of unspoken pain. The night air carried the memory of their laughter faint, almost like it belonged to someone else now. Just hours ago, they were sitting on that same old rooftop, joking about how life felt like a movie that couldn't decide its ending. Aisha had said, maybe some stories aren't meant to end with forever. Maya didn't answer then. She didn't know how to. All she could think of was how Aisha's eyes glowed when she talked about dreams, how her voice softened when she said Maya's name like it was a secret meant to be whispered, not shouted. They were both running from the same thing, the fear of loving too deeply, of being seen, of being broken again. So they walked away, each step a surrender. But halfway down the street, something shifted. Maya stopped. The air felt wrong and incomplete. She turned around, her heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the sound of everything else. And there she was, Aisha, standing still in the middle of the street, her eyes searching for something familiar, something safe. When their eyes met, everything fell silent. No words were needed. Words had already done enough damage. Instead, Maya took a hesitant step forward. Aisha mirrored her, unsure but hopeful. The space between them, once filled with confusion, began to dissolve. Their smiles were small, shaky, the kind that holds 1,000 apologies and just as many promises. And then, without planning, without hesitation, they met halfway. The kiss wasn't like the first one. That one was messy, lost in the blur of alcohol and adrenaline. This one was steady, real, sober. The world around them softened into colors they didn't notice, the streetlights flickering, the wind gently teasing their hair. Nothing else mattered. No noise, no people, no fear. Just two souls who had already tried to let go and realized they couldn't. When they finally pulled back, Aisha whispered, "So this isn't goodbye?" Maya smiled, a quiet, knowing smile, and shook her head. "No," she said softly, "it never was." And, just like that, the night began to breathe again. Two hearts that had almost drifted apart found their way back, not because fate demanded it, but because love did. Because sometimes, the real goodbye is the one that never happens.